Level with me. Perfection is overrated, right? This video stemmed from the book that I'm currently reading, Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, and full transparency, at the time of writing this script, I'm only 110 pages into this 400-page novel, but it seems that the protagonist, Selena, is infallible. She has no flaws, and it's really quite irritating. But before we jump into the video, just a reminder that this table works with shared XP, so any tips, tricks, or thoughts on the subject, leave them in the comments below to dish out some XP to the other players in our community, and I'll be sure to check them out as well. Thank you so much for the love on the last video as well, by the way. Didn't expect that to pop off. Thank you, and some really nice debates in the comments. That's what I like. This is what I like to see. I learned a lot from the comments section in the last video. Thank you. So I believe that the problem with Selena, the protagonist, is that we don't actually see any of her courageous endeavors that earns her this entitlement. Like, when she's released from prison to compete in a Royals Championship competition thing, and she is looking at the other guards escorting her, she thinks things like, she could disarm 2 guards in a heartbeat, page 3, and then page 19. The Crown Prince clicked his tongue and circled her slowly. Kale and all the guards, 14 guards plus the captain, by the way, watched them with their hands on their swords, as they should. In less than a second, she could get her arm over the prince's head and have her shackles crushing his windpipe. We've only known this woman for a few pages. This feels super unearned, this weird brash confidence, as well as acting very blasé to the situation revolving around her. When Selena arrives at the castle where the champion trials are being held, she is not the biggest, she's not the most intimidating, she's not the most brutish, and this is made very clear in the text. But then, Selena's told by her sponsor not to make it too obvious who she is, otherwise she'll win every trial easily.
Wanna see me run to that mountain and back? You wanna see me do it again?
That is like telling Superman on your baseball team to just tap the ball and run to first base. Yeah, I made a sports reference and a comic book reference in a D&D video. Get a guy who can do it all. My fiance doesn't find it annoying at all. But again, this is something that the reader has no evidence of, no context of, and no backstory that tells the reader that Selena is really as good as they are making her out to be. It's also a known fact that she's a criminal, and while she takes on a lesser criminal persona of a jewel thief while competing in the trials, just to hide her true crimes of being an assassin for hire, she still seems to be immediately accepted by the princess of the region. Selena just immediately, within half a page, hits off with a royal. How? By speaking her language, apparently. How does she know this? I don't know, it's not really explained clearly, but apparently that's just something Selena can do.
How? 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 I don't know.
She also seems to make friends with a handful of the other competitors, almost like they're not at risk of constantly being unalived by the royal guards. She even wins over her sponsor, who's supposed to be intimidating her, keeping her on the straight and narrow, and treating her like the criminal she is. But then within a week, she's won him over like everyone else. This guy is bad at his job. It has been over 100 pages and she's not faced any challenges so far. We've got no factual history that relates to her brash nature. We've yet to see a flaw or failure in Selena. And honestly, it's kind of repetitive and boring. I only hope that in the next 100 pages we see a fallible side to her, or maybe even like a couple of chapters of flashback that kind of explains how she got to the status that she has now. But yes, that was the catalyst for today's video. I believe, and please comment your thoughts, like I said, we want discussions in the comments section. Faultless characters are actually going to be more difficult to work with in the long run for both the party and the dungeon master. If there are no secrets, if there's no agenda, if they're the most likable person on Earth, then they have to wait for something to happen in-game to have something to play off of and to create an interesting hook to rope the player into. So what are the most generic flaws that we can give a character? I actually asked you in a YouTube poll last week what the worst flaw for a character was, and it was a tie for the winner between being a lone wolf character and rolling insight checks on other player characters. The other options were spending party funds and being too lawful good, and that actually came in joint second, so it was a really tight poll. I appreciated this comment from Gat saying that everything other than rolling insight checks on other PCs could be used to some comedic effect. Rolling insight checks on NPCs is simply going to make the session longer from doing the rolls and hearing the outcomes, as well as create, and they've correctly, I think it's the perfect word, they're going to create an unhealthy atmosphere at the table between the players themselves, which is obviously not what you want when you're there to have a good time. Remember to look out for the next poll so you can get some insight to the next video topic. Well, firstly, we do have to acknowledge that there are good character flaws and bad character flaws, in that good flaws will assist in certain situations and create future storylines, whereas a bad flaw may just be a detriment to the party. In my mind, good flaws are simple things that could actually expand into something bigger down the line. Maybe your character is a gambler, they got debts owed to bad people, and when those people are come a-knocking, the rest of the party get dragged into it. Then they have to decide how best to handle it. Do they deal with it with violence, or do they deal with it tactically and try to bend to the people's whim? It also gives the opportunity for the character to make new enemies, because imagine the scenario in which the gambler decides to gamble with something other than gold pieces, and it blows back on the entire party. When that BBEG shows up again, they are going to be pissed if they get screwed over by the character. Or maybe your character's got a secret and they had to flee their last town because of a quest gone wrong, whatever that means to you, and then their misdeeds catch up to them. Think about Ashton Greymore's backstory from the Hell's Bells campaign. He got caught breaking into Gianna Hexam's house and now works for her, and eventually ends up becoming the party's problem, being dragged into his past dirty work. Now, this is going to sound awful, but in-game, minor,
In-game.
slight,
In-game.
racism
In-game.
is a good flaw to have. Hear me out. It means that the character is going to have not only the chance to grow and learn to be shown the vast scope of people in the Forgotten Realms, but it also gives the Dungeon Master plenty of opportunities to throw moral conundrums at the player themselves, which could then put the character in real predicaments if they go wrong. It offers storylines and plot hooks that could last an entire campaign, and good character flaws should have the potential to last the entire campaign, and offer many chances for the flaw to rear its head and offer a multitude of outcomes, so it isn't like the same ending every time the flaw comes up. But this choice of having a small flaw that could grow into a plot is no more noticeable than in The Legend of Vox Machina. In the 2014 Player's Handbook, they offer up potential flaws related to character backgrounds. For example, the entertainer: I'm a sucker for a pretty face, and if that doesn't scream Scanlan Shorthalt, I don't know what does. This is a prevalent character flaw because it came back to bite Scanlan down the line after he met his daughter that he didn't know he had. What started off as a comedy bit, a bard stereotype cliche, ended up kickstarting a brand new character storyline for Sam Riegel and gave another dimension to how he could play his character. On to bad flaws. Bad flaws are things that are going to hold the party back, that will stunt character growth and limit the amount of opportunities that the player has to engage with the quests at hand. The best example of a bad character flaw is the cliche being a lone wolf.
I tend to think of myself as a one-man wolf pack.
Going it alone is sometimes okay if your character has things that they need to sort out whilst they're in the city, but to not engage with the party like during the in-universe downtime, or simply saying no to another player's ideas and then going off and doing your own plan, is not gonna get you very far in becoming the favored player at the table in either the party or the DM's books. Is it? No. Another negative aspect that could stem from being a lone wolf character is that your character could appear to be aloof or blasé when reacting to situations which, around the table, could feel quite rude, as it looks like you're not really invested in what's going on, and the Dungeon Master is trying to keep everyone on board and they're trying to keep everyone entertained, but if you're appearing like this, doesn't look great. Another character flaw that could get you onto the player's bad side is being bad with the party funds. If you've got a character who's spending money frivolously with no consultation, that could be detrimental down the line, especially if you have a mean DM. Please bear in mind that there's a difference between using a couple of gold from party funds to, bribe a guard to look the other way, and then diverting party funds entirely for your own gain. This was a trait that Luke Westaway's character Dob from Oxventure had. He was the self-proclaimed party treasurer, and would often say that during in-universe downtime, he would deposit party funds in a lake. Obviously. Ellen Rose's character Merylwen, she had protests against Dob being the party treasurer, but they were largely ignored. Or at least they were never actually confirmed that Dob would stop being the party treasurer, and this led to lots of party money being spent on like 200% tips to the bartenders just because Luke could. The only reason that Westaway got away with it was because, one, it was a comedy podcast, so the DM, Johnny Chiodini, kind of finangled ways to make sure the party was okay for funds, and B, Johnny ruined the game's economy early doors, so it was already fecked. Now, I had a bad trait when I first started playing D&D. I only did it once, but it was a really, really snaky thing to do. I generally think it was in like the second session of my D&D career. I rolled an insight check on another player character after they told us a little bit about their backstory. And this kind of, I feel, took away not only the character's agency, but also the Dungeon Master's agency in a way. I practically forced the player to tell the truth in the moment, which, if it's a possibility that they're bending the truth for story purposes, I've just removed that possibility because the DM has told us what I'd like to know to some extent. Of course, if it's in the character's nature, not the player's nature, the character's nature to not entirely be telling the truth when the party are sometimes in altercations and situations, then go for it. Fair game. Vibe check them. The DM can simply say something like, you feel something isn't right. They're not blinking, and it seems they're trying very hard not to break eye contact. A single bead of sweat drips from their forehead and ends up resting on the corner of their top lip. Is it nerves? But to straight up question someone that early into the campaign about their backstory, that didn't feel right in hindsight. I shouldn't have done it. If there is something dodgy going on, then hopefully the Dungeon Master can turn that into a plot point. So rolling insight checks on other PCs is something that I just don't do anymore. I try not to make suspicion a flaw in my characters. But, if the PCs are gonna act shady, then personally, I think it's absolutely fair game to roll an insight vibe check on them. Agree, disagree, leave your thoughts in the comments. Then, of course, we've got the generally lawful, good, neutral, good classes, like the Cleric and the Paladin. What flaws would be good for them? Well, maybe they could have the exact opposite problem to our other flaws we've discussed. Maybe, contrary to the title of this video, they are too perfect. A paladin who lives and dies by their oath, and that's all that they've been brought up to believe in, and now they kind of just look down on everyone. They actually need to become more of a rounded person and have some real life experience outside of the cloister that they grew up in. They need to live a little, and there is a perfect song from the musical version of Sister Act called Life I Never Led, which is sung by a character who lived her entire life in the convent, Sister Mary Roberts. And the lyrics read, I've never seen Paris one naked being kissed. I've never quite realized just how much I missed. And what did I get for hedging each bet? Another regret, and that's all. And all of the wishes unasked for, all of the needs unfed, there's all that remain of a life I never led. I think that sets up a solid arc for an oath-bound paladin. They have to try and maneuver carrying out schemes and plans to thwart nefarious people whilst trying to also keep the moral high ground. When I was at the BBEG podcast, M told us a story of a cleric that he played with, which privatized their healing magic. And that could be an amazing flaw if they made it an entire backstory that could go into a future plot. Imagine this. The cleric comes from a famed family, one of the rare few who are actually blessed with healing magic, so they develop the first hospital in the city. But then they realize that they can charge people to tend to their battle wounds. However, one day when a war is waged on the city and the family charges the soldiers who risk their lives fighting for the city for the time spent in their now very expensive chain of hospitals, the cleric sees how wrong this is, so, under the cover of darkness, they venture out into the city on their own and quickly realize that healthcare is for everyone. And some people just can't afford the prices of good healthcare that their family has set up. And that means that the real BBEG in the Forgotten Realms is capitalism. As always. And maybe if it's like a solo city-based campaign, because the cleric has been teaching people how to tend to their own wounds, the cleric's family would eventually feel the financial repercussions of their actions and try to stomp this out. Maybe they've got a say on how the medical components are distributed in the city, and they decide to shut that down, stopping medical care for the entire city until they get paid. Why am I not mad at this plot, and why am I going to write this right after recording this video? These are just some of the basic generic flaws you can give your character. If you check the PHP, there's a big list in there. There's a wide variety of different character flaws that you can embrace with your latest PC. However, it does take the right mindset to utilize them, the right party composition, both in terms of characters and player mindset, and then also the right DM that can bring these flaws to the forefront and bring these flaws to the forefront of the storyline and create hooks that the players will want to sink their teeth into and test their moral compass and ability to learn and adapt for the good of the group. And those are my thoughts on character flaws. As per usual, any tips, tricks, or thoughts on the subject, leave them in the comments below to dish out XP to the other players in our community, and I'll be sure to check them out as well. See you in the next session.